You learned what a species is in school. Two animals that can mate and produce fertile offspring belong to the same species. Simple, clean, done. Except it's completely wrong. Not wrong like a typo. Wrong like a map that shows the ocean where the mountains are. The definition of species, one of the most fundamental concepts in all of biology, is quietly, embarrassingly broken. And scientists have known this for decades. So what is a species? And why does the answer matter more than you think? Let's start with what you were told. The most famous definition is the biological species concept, proposed by Ernst Mayr in 1942. Species are groups of organisms that interbreed with each other and are reproductively isolated from other groups. Wolves breed with wolves. Dolphins breed with dolphins. Easy. But the moment you test this in the real world, it starts falling apart. Polar bears and grizzly bears are supposed to be separate species. They have different habitats, different behaviors, different body plans shaped by millions of years of separate evolution. And yet, as Arctic sea ice disappears and their ranges begin to overlap, they are mating. Their offspring, called grizzly bears or growler bears, are fertile. By Mayr's own definition, polar bears and grizzly bears are the same species. Nobody in biology accepts this. Nobody wants to rewrite the textbooks. So scientists keep using the definition and quietly ignoring the exceptions. But the exceptions are everywhere. Coyotes and wolves hybridize. Horses and donkeys produce mules. Infertile, yes, but the line between their species is porous enough that it keeps happening. Two species of Darwin's finches on the Galapagos, the birds that helped invent the concept of evolution, have been interbreeding for decades and producing fertile, viable hybrids. Lions and tigers produce ligers. Ligers are real. They are enormous, strange, and they exist. If the most foundational rule in taxonomy has this many exceptions, maybe the rule is telling us something. Maybe species aren't the clean categories we invented them to be. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Evolution doesn't care about your definitions. Evolution is not a machine that produces finished, labeled products. It is a process, constant, ongoing, never truly complete. A species is not a thing. It is a moment, a snapshot of a population mid-blur, caught between what it was and what it might become. Think of it this way. Imagine you could film a river for 1,000,000 years and play it back in 10 seconds. What you'd see isn't a river with clear banks and a defined channel. You'd see something constantly shifting, braiding, splitting, merging, changing direction entirely. That is what evolution looks like. That is what species look like, from the outside of time. The problem is we are inside time. We get one frame, and in that frame, we draw lines. But it gets stranger. Bacteria don't have species at all. Under the biological species concept, bacteria, which reproduce asexually by simply dividing, cannot be grouped into species by mating behavior. They don't mate. So taxonomists use a workaround. If two bacterial strains share more than 70% of their DNA, they're the same species. Arbitrary, functional, deeply unsatisfying, and it gets worse. Bacteria engage in something called horizontal gene transfer. They pass genes sideways, directly to other bacteria, across what we would call species lines. A bacterium can absorb DNA from its environment, from dead cells, from viruses, and incorporate it into its own genome. Your gut bacteria are constantly doing this right now. Genes jump species. Genes jump kingdoms. The tree of life, it turns out, is less a tree and more a web. When scientists tried to build a complete evolutionary family tree of all life on Earth, they discovered that up to 10% of the human genome has origins in horizontal gene transfer events from ancient bacteria. We are, in a measurable sense, partly bacterial. The border between species is not just blurry at the edges, it sometimes doesn't exist at all. So scientists have tried to fix this. Over the past century, they have proposed at least 34 different definitions of species. Not 2, not 5. 34. The phylogenetic species concept says a species is the smallest group of organisms that share a common ancestor and can be distinguished by unique inherited traits. The ecological species concept says a species is defined by the ecological niche it occupies. The cohesion species concept. The genealogical species concept. The genotypic cluster concept. They all work, in some cases. They all fail, in others. The ring species is one of the most beautiful examples of the problem. Take the Insatina salamander in California. Populations of this salamander form a ring around the Central Valley. As you move along the ring, neighboring populations interbreed just fine. They are the same species by any definition. But at the southern tip of the ring, the two ends meet, and they don't interbreed. They behave like separate species. Toward each other, they are. Around the ring, they aren't. At what point in that ring does one species become two? There is no answer. There is no moment. Speciation is not an event. It is a gradient. And yet the word species is not just a scientific tool. It has consequences. Endangered species legislation protects species. Conservation funding targets species. Captive breeding programs operate species by species. When taxonomists argue over whether a population of birds in two neighboring valleys constitutes one species, or two, the answer determines whether one of those populations gets legal protection or gets quietly written off. The lines we draw are not just intellectual. They determine what survives. In 2016, taxonomists reclassified the giraffe. What was considered one species was redrawn as 4 distinct species. Overnight, 3 of those new species became vulnerable to extinction under conservation law, not because anything had changed in the savanna, but because a committee changed the definition. This is not a flaw in science. It is science working exactly as it should, constantly revising, updating, correcting. But it reveals something important. The categories we use to understand life are human inventions imposed on a process that preceded us by billions of years and will continue long after us. Nature did not produce species. We did. Evolution produced variation, populations, gradients of difference, lineages bleeding into other lineages across geological time. We looked at this continuous, churning, tangled process and said, this group gets a name, that group gets a different name, and a line goes between them. It is the only way we can talk about it. Language requires nouns. Nouns require categories. Categories require edges. But living things don't have edges. They have gradients. Right now, evolution is happening. Populations of house sparrows introduced to North America 150 years ago have already diverged measurably from their European relatives. Different beak sizes, different body proportions, different behavior. In isolated fish populations in lakes cut off from each other by the last ice age, separate lineages are diverging. In islands, in mountain valleys, in urban environments carved apart by highways, populations are splitting apart in real time. In 10,000 years, some of those splits will be irreversible. Some won't. We won't be here to see which ones cross the line. But there won't be a line to cross. There never was. Maybe that's the most honest thing biology has to say about life. It is not a catalog. It is not a filing system. Life is a process so vast and so ancient that our best attempts to describe it keep breaking under the weight of the real thing. The concept of species is one of the most useful broken tools in all of science. Like a compass that doesn't quite point north, but still gets you through the forest. We know it's imperfect. We keep using it anyway, because the alternative, admitting that the fundamental unit of biology is not a real thing, is a little too strange to sit with over breakfast. But strange things have a way of turning out to be true. And the universe doesn't care even a little bit.